Everyone else on the Hill was asking about what he knows about Facebook's crypto plans as well, with their cryptocurrency Libra planned. He responded to those questions. Take a listen to what he had to say.
Libra raises many serious concerns regarding privacy, money laundering, consumer protection, and financial stability. These are concerns that should be thoroughly and publicly addressed before proceeding. And that's why at the Fed we've set up a working group to focus on this set of issues. We are coordinating with our colleagues in the government in the United States, the regulatory agencies and Treasury. We're coordinating with central banks and governments around the world to look into this. And I'll just add that the process of addressing these concerns, we think, should be a patient and careful one and not a sprint to implementation.
All right, so again, caution from Fed Chair Powell there on the crypto front.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, there are two things that really get me excited. It's labor market data,
sure, obviously,
and regulation. And I think it's interesting because when it comes to cryptocurrency, I mean, this is important because the Federal Reserve actually doesn't really have the primary authority over regulating these types of things. But obviously, you have the interest in this type of space because of the fact that, Facebook is so large, and that's what Powell was talking about. It's unclear this early on about what the Fed's authority is over regulating these type of cryptocurrencies on its own merit, right? The CFTC and the SEC, they're totally separate. They have different roles. But for their part, I mean, it's interesting that Powell said, quote, they would rise to systemically important levels, referring to Libra, just because of the mere size of the Facebook network.
Sure.
So when I hear systemically, I think that's interesting because the only non-bank institutions that the Federal Reserve has ever oversaw were some insurance companies and AIG and GE after the financial crisis. And FSOC, which is kind of the organization that the Fed kind of partnered up with, it's almost like a justice league of regulators, if you will. They jointly decided to try to regulate.
That's got to get you amped.
It's got to get you amped up. But they jointly decided to name, Prudential and AIG, GE, MetLife as these systemically important institutions. So it raises the questions about whether or not they'll try to use the same precedent. It'd have to be a completely different standard, but to do the same and apply that kind of risk standard to Libra.
An interesting tidbit out of those 3 hours, but the main takeaway being that a much more dovish Powell sat there for 3 hours and moved the markets yet again, signaling that it's going to be a dovish Fed when we get the next policy decision.
Yeah, and we can argue, what does that really mean? Does 25 basis points mean more job growth and wage growth? Not directly. But does it instill confidence, and can it get the yield curve back to functional? Perhaps.
And also when Maxine Waters asked him if he was called by Trump and fired, would he step down? Maybe she should have said, if he tweets at you. That's more likely.
Yeah. Nonetheless, he's still going to be there. He said he's not leaving. Brian Chung, it was an exhausting thing to watch there, a long stretch, but you enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. We all enjoyed it.
Exactly.
Thank you for sticking with
We
us.
get to do it all over again tomorrow.
That's exciting times. All right, very good. Brian Chung, thank you so much for breaking that down for us.